This last year or so has been one of the most eye-opening years of my entire life so far, in both a positive and negative sense, but the highs were far more memorable than the lows. I graduated high school, finally had my own source of income. I even got to meet one of my longest lasting online friends.
Jake, you want to try it?
Take a sip. It's pretty.
Hell, I even got to travel like all the way across the country for the very first time. That's crazy. Though the unfortunate downside is that I wasn't able to connect with art the way I would have wanted to this year. I'm a career fella, and sometimes pulling sick tricks in Tony Hawk 2 and drowning myself in Baja Blast sounds a little bit more fun than engaging with literally anything I've been meaning to experience. Thus, I've made it a goal every December for as long as I continue to live to watch one movie every day for that entire month. It's how I've gotten to get acquainted with many directors' works such as Stanley Kubrick, Edgar Wright, and Luca Guadagnino. Movies rule, dude. They used to be a really big blind spot in my journey of art. I've just never had the interest until, well, please don't make fun of me for this, until I made a Letterboxd account. Something about logging everything I watched into one little space and getting to explore more films was addicting. That, and some of my friends are also big film freaks, so I was led down a path of expanding my film horizons. I've only done this once before, but this video idea of mine popped up in my head, and hey, we're here now. Do I regret it? Maybe. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about everything I've watched, but hopefully this video serves as a really good sample platter of some anime you should give a watch. I will leave a warning that much of this stuff deals with a lot of very uncomfortable subject matter in a very confrontational and harsh way. A lot of this stuff is not pretty to discuss or watch sometimes. Right here I have a pretty general list of topics that will be discussed in the video. If maybe you don't jive with some of these, I would recommend looking in the description, as I'll probably list out all of the films that I watched and when obviously I talk about them in the video, but with that I will probably also put down like a list of certain trigger warnings that are specific to that movie. So if there's any topics that you don't want to hear me discuss, feel free to skip around the video. Anyways, let's get right to it. But before we get into any of that real juicy stuff, let's talk about a classic. Project Echo. Project Echo rules. Echo ends up being a part of the catalyst of modern anime girls alongside Cutie Honey, the girls from Dirty Pair, and the Daikon Bunny Girl. By that I mean, these were some of the blueprints for stuff like Sailor Moon and the likes. I think even down to aesthetics. Project Echo fits right at home with those other classics. I have a ridiculous soft spot for the anime neighborhood. The trees, blue skies, and the sort of minimalist stylings of homes is sort of grounding. It allows the viewer to believe that these girls are just normal girls. This OVA has literally all of the archetypes you would expect from this sort of thing. The energetic badass, the bubbly and emotional girl, and the stoic mean girl are all here and in style. There's even lesbian undertones. Echo is very much a product of its culture in that this thing is imprinted with mecha and Fist of the North Star references all over it. It's very much a homage to 70s and 80s anime, which the artist grew up with, but it still has its own flair with its action and narrative. Eiko is one of the most badass protagonists I think I've seen yet. Her nonchalant attitude matched with her abilities makes her a ridiculously fun protagonist, especially when paired with Seiko, who I think is my newest kin. I love my ditzy ADHD queens. Also lesbian undertones. But also two of the main villains are transphobic stereotypes. That and its depiction of underage girls makes it a tad conflicting. I'm going to echo what I've said before and better from my Oron video. There are certain things that you may just have to accept with this sort of stuff, even if it's wrong. There's a lot of other art out there if this is not your gig. I still think otherwise. Project Echo is one of my favorite things I've watched this last year. It's so creative, frenetic, and just plain cool. Anime girls rock, dude. For some more really cool anime girl action, you should check out Hells. I found it on streaming service Tubi, and my god is that service amazing. And I usually don't jive with streaming services all too much. It has this huge library of obscure and weird films and shows all for free. Stuff like Suspicion Suspiria 2001, the Final Destination series, Fat Albert 2004, and the film I'm talking about now, Hells. And right off the bat, I must say, this is one of the most beautiful animated works I've ever seen. The sketchiness of the art style and the smooth animation complement each other so well here. The action sequences are genuinely so cool. I adore the vibrant colors. They make even Hell look appealing with its use of darker tones and purples and blues. The character design, especially for the demons, are so creative and striking. Even the background characters are very deliberately designed. Some of my favorites being Helvis, Stella, and Phantoma. This film goes at quite a breakneck pace though, which can make some of the characters not as fleshed out as I would have liked. But at the same time, it feels like it goes around in circles with its main messages, especially by the end. This movie throws quite a lot at the viewer very quickly. It lost me at certain points, but I was still engaged with whatever was going on for the most part. There are a lot of deep references to the Bible, Adam and Eve, and Cain and Abel, but most of that was very much lost on me. This movie has so many elements that rule, but its writing is its weakest aspect for me. If it cut about like 20 to 25 minutes around the end, it would be so much better for me. But I commend the artistry at hand. Madhouse rules, and we'll definitely see more from them later.
But yeah, so I forgot to mention that this was dubbed by Team 4-Star, like the Dragon Ball Z abridged people. And this dub was pretty recent too, made for the 2018 Blu-ray release of the film by Discotech. Turns out that a lot of the people from Team 4-Star actually have quite impressive resumes under their belt for the games and anime industries. Check out the dub if you can, it really impressed me after hearing this fact.
Crayon Shin-chan, The Adult Empire Strikes Back was also a very pleasant surprise for me. I've never really engaged or heard much about the franchise other than the Boku no Natsuyasumi game from like a couple of years ago, to be honest. And oh yeah, this is beautiful. I love how cell animation really makes colors pop. The bright city that Crayon Shin-chan and his family inhabits feels so lived in and vibrant. Any location this movie takes you looks stunning, even just from plain old gas stations. The shots inside the Yesterday Once More building when the sun was setting were gorgeous. That darkish orange makes this the best sunset I've ever seen in a piece of art yet. I really love fictional sunsets, by the way. It brings a lot of really cozy feelings to me as an Arizonan. This film in general does too. It tackles growing up in a really mature but not overly serious fashion. It has a lot of silliness to it, but it sticks its heart up high and has a lot of it. It doesn't make me cry or anything, but I did get kind of emotional by the end with its message. It's a treat to watch if you're looking for a more chill movie that might make you think a bit more than you've expected. Oh Jesus, the pacing on this has already probably been ruined, but Angel's Egg is an early masterpiece from director Mamoru Oshii. You most likely know him for Ghost in the Shell, but he also worked on a couple of Urusei Yatsura movies. Many a director attribute his works for being some of the most defining adult animations, such as James Cameron. You know, like the blue Avatar guy, he really likes Ghost in the Shell, even saying that it was the first truly adult animation film to reach a level of literary and visual excellence. Oshii's works have a lot of the same sensibilities and themes carried over. I can't speak for Ghost in the Shell just yet, it'll come, don't worry, sit your little booty down. Also, side note, yeah, this whole video was written over a period of like 4 months. This project was massive for me, and I don't care to take too much of this out, lol. Hope you enjoy. Angel's Egg is one of, if not the most mature films I've ever seen. Not from the content itself per se, but for how it treats it. The movie is set in this desolate village, visualized with dark blues and blacks. The setting is all but empty, with abandoned buildings and homes, unoccupied streets, and some of the best ruins I think I've ever seen. Melancholy is the best word to describe a film like this one. A young lady travels with an egg around the city and attempts to take care of it. She finds a young boy along her travels who eventually becomes a companion of sorts. A lot of the narrative and theming is heavily based on biblical stories, none of which I can meaningfully tackle, unfortunately. But even without those aspects into account, Angel's Egg is a literal art gallery moving at 24 frames a second. This is accomplished not only with Oshii's sensibilities and eye for the otherworldly, but with Yoshitaka Amano's beautiful character design work. Amano's style has always walked a fine line of realistic and fantasy-like. His line work is some of the most delicate I've ever seen. You can really notice it with how he draws the girl's individual hairs. The way he draws features such as eyes has always come across as really striking too for that reason. Amano's character designs still allow for lots of emotion to be emitted through just the characters' faces. The lack of dialogue is made a strength with how strong the characters can show how they're feeling through expression and body language. Angel's Eye has a lot more power than I thought it would. I honestly didn't understand every little intricacy of this piece, but it stands out to me as a masterwork. Hell yeah, baby. The Yoshi-a-thon. I had both Angel's Egg and Ghost in the Shell on my bucket list, but after some basic research, I found out he directed an Urusei Yatsura movie. I'm honestly not too familiar with Urusei Yatsura outside of a very general premise and obviously Lum. I just know that this alien girl is in love with some pervert teenager or something like that. I'm more familiar with the creator Rumiko Takahashi's other popular work, Ranma and a Half. Now that show I fucking love. It's super duper cozy. And just fucking awesome. I love that show. It's great. You should watch it. But this is about Urusei Yatsura, Beautiful Dreamer. I read a bit about the plot beforehand and its similarities to Oshi's other works, and honestly I still came out pretty surprised. Both Beautiful Dreamer and Angel's Egg utilized philosophy in their narratives, though Beautiful Dreamer is a tad more obvious with its themes, studying the impact of dreams. It goes surprisingly in depth with those concepts too. The film is very much inspired by Japanese folklore, specifically a story called Urushima Taro. The tale follows a fisherman who saves a sea turtle from children harassing it, and is granted a ride from the turtle to the Dragon Palace. There, he got to enjoy life's pleasantries until he remembered his mother back home. Taro comes back home to find out that no one recognizes him, and that his mother is gone from the 300 years he was at the palace, thus leading him to open up a box the princess gave him, and he dies from old age. That's the most commonly known version, at the very least, and the version most referenced in Beautiful Dreamer. Elements such as time and the dreamlands are very much taken from that tale, though the film still puts its own spin on things and has a narrative that can be enjoyed without that bit of context. It's a classic, and Pigmon moment, we love Pigmon in this house. But the true classic from Oshi was his 1995 masterpiece Ghost in the Shell, and damn, what a film. What I think most about this one is how desolate the world is. Oshi defo took a lot of cues from Angel's Egg, I feel, in that department. The washed out grays everywhere with the sterile buildings is so enticing to me. The conversations this film has about the line between humanity and technology resonated with me too. I believe those discussions are more important than ever, as technology evolves and will soon enough surpass the ingenuity we have as a human race. Also, it doubles as a cool as hell thriller flick. Oshi has a lot of versatility in his filmography, which should defo be appreciated. Ghost in the Shell's bleak and barren vision of the future got me reflecting back on Akira. Great film, there's a reason that's a classic, but what stood out to me the most in retrospect was the depiction of a Neo-Japan of sorts. It still has a certain amount of minimalism in its architecture, but even around the towns there were a ton of neons lit inside and outside. Even things like vehicles and such are these bright reds rather than Ghost in the Shell's grays. I'd say Akira's Neo-Tokyo looks kind of urban if anything. That was just something I appreciated looking back. Battle Angel Alita was another OVA we'll watch that had a similar vibe, but was much closer to Ghost in the Shell aesthetically. Crazy how underrated that one is though, but there's a certain Master Thief I need to discuss. Lupin III is one of those franchises that I wish I got to experience more of, but just don't because of life and shit. I adore the ensemble cast the franchise consists of, and the wit of the narratives a lot. There's a very cartoonish energy to it all that encourages the viewer to have a lot of fun with it, though it has a very unique edge to it all that makes it stand the test of time. I've only seen one of the movies being Castle of Cagliostro before this marathon. It's very much a Miyazaki work in the sense that it's a far more tranquil piece compared to other Lupin media. There's absolutely charm and spirit of Lupin there, but it comes off as far more relaxed and restrained, especially compared to Mystery of Mamo, which might even come off as a tad mean-spirited in a way if you've only seen its successor, but I'll talk more on that in a bit. Lupin III the First is much more akin to Cagliostro, a globe-trotting adventure with old friends and new friends and even a bear. Oh boy. Very funny. But this film is pretty great. It has high stakes, the character dynamics are fun as always, and god, the animation. It's most likely to be the main appeal of this film compared to other Lupin films, being the first foray into CGI for Lupin. Marza, who you might know for the Sonic Unleashed cutscenes and the short films that they made, and TMS did a spectacular job adapting these characters into the medium. The designs are very faithful, the characters are expressive as all get out, and the choreography is amazing. This is definitely a must-watch for any animation fan, I feel. I truly believe this is one of the better introductions to the world of Lupin III. Another part of the Lupin universe I explored was Mystery of Mamo, which also happens to be a very beloved and underrated film from the franchise. I think out of the few movies I've seen so far, this one is the most accurate to the original characterizations. Lupin and the gang will always work well in any situation, but the way their characters clash constantly in here is fun as hell to watch. As always, the dialogue is very snappy too. The chemistry between the main ensemble will never get tiring for me, especially Lupin and Fujiko's on and off relationship, which is something that's actually highlighted here. The action is frenetic too, with the same ingenuity you would expect from Lupin. Here's one of my favorite examples. The tip of Goemon's sword breaks off in a fight, and Lupin picks it up. Later on, the main villain, Mamo, shoots this big ass laser at Lupin, and he pulls out that piece of the sword and burns Mamo to oblivion. If that isn't creative, I don't know what is. And this is a constant with this film. I feel like everything wraps itself pretty neatly in this narrative, and that narrative is wacky as all get out, more so than other pieces of Lupin media, but watching it unfold is satisfying as all get out. But you're watching a Lupin film for its characters really, and like I said, they're great. Hell, I don't think I even mentioned that this was the very first Lupin film. Like, what? The way director Yoshikawa and the team executed this film, from the characterization and the action, makes it almost feel like he was an expert on the show. Hell, I decided to actually do some research on the man, and it turns out, no, he hadn't worked on anything else Lupin related other than Mystery of Mamo before or after its production. What a fucking guy. If you haven't watched anything Lupin related, get to it, or else. And with that, it's time for another marathon, bitch. The Satoshi Kon-a-thon. Satoshi Kon is now up there with my favorite directors ever. His films are mind-boggling to say the least, and his debut, Perfect Blue, couldn't be a better indicator of his artistry. The movie is a thriller starring a J-pop idol named Mima, who decides that she wants to be an actress, though slowly she descends into madness thanks to a stalker and her loss of control over herself. Perfect Blue dove much more into the stardom aspect than I expected, weirdly enough. Mima experiences a loss of autonomy of herself as she's more involved with the inner workings of the show she's working on. First, it's just a line or two, and soon enough she's playing more significant roles, which wear her down more and more. I won't go into specifics because I truly believe you should experience this and Cohen's other works as blind as possible, but all the while, Mima is being stalked by a longtime fan. Her mental descent is what gives this movie its hook. The best kind of horror allows the viewer to at least sit at the edge of their seat in recoil and disgust. The suspense of horror media is what gives the medium its edge, and I very much felt all of those emotions here. This is a very common point of discussion with Kon, but the way the lines of reality and fiction are blurred is so unique to him. Example being when Mima's alternate personality shows up. It represents the self that feels people only cared about her J-pop career, and as an artist who's had to struggle with appeasing certain people in the guise of an effect on growth, this hit especially hard for me. The film was equally beautiful and chilling. Perfect Blue was one of the better works I engaged with this marathon. The only natural next step from that was Millennium Actress. Now, this one fucked me up hard. It sucks that out of pretty much the rest of Cohen's filmography, this is the one that gets discussed the least, when honestly I think it's his best work. At least it's my personal favorite of his. The story is about these two directors wanting to film a documentary about an actress. In order to do so, they visit her every day, and as this movie progresses, she reveals more and more about her career. I honestly didn't know what I was in for when starting this one up. For a while, I had thought maybe this was some sort of spiritual successor to Perfect Blue in a way, mostly because the main protagonists happen to be actresses. I also sort of thought it'd be like The Fabelmans, where it'd be this sort of retelling of Cohen's life and how he became the artist he was for some reason, but surprisingly, Millennium Actress takes a far more emotional turn. It's this biopic of a fictional, at least to us, actress that slowly turns into a romance story. The way Millennium Actress sets this up is rather unconventional and works so well. When Chiyoko, the actress, begins to reflect on her time acting, the setting literally changes and the directors are now a part of her story. She discusses her involvement in war and how she eventually came to meet the love of her life. It's actually super cool how the film makes use of Kone's ability to merge those lines of reality and fantasy. Perfect Blue utilized this to highlight the deterioration of Mima's mental health, while Millennium Actress uses it to heighten the impact of Chiyoko's narrative. There's a lot I love to dive deeper into, but I'd rather you watch it for yourself if it sounds interesting at all. I think I've found my new favorite animated film, probably. Okay, so yeah, this is written 4 months later from when I originally wrote this, but yeah, this probably aged poorly. Maybe I may have gotten back into Evangelion, and thus I may have watched End of Eva just a couple times. Once was in theaters, and oh my god, that was so fucking awesome. But oh well, you might just have to wait to find out my thoughts about Evangelion. Like and subscribe.
You know, they were pretty mid anyways.
Paprika, on the other hand, oh golly, it's a doozy. But that lies the reason as to why Paprika is such an intriguing film. Paprika may as well be the apex of Kone's filmography, taking his motif of fiction and reality to its max. It felt more like an experience than anything else. Not that this movie doesn't have a pretty clear and concise story to it, it's just really easy to find yourself lost in the world of it. On rewatch, I was able to understand its narrative more. I found myself connecting with its theme of dreams being able to connect with people. You, as the viewer, are thrust into this vast, imaginative world trying to piece the mystery of who stole the DC Mini. I love how art can pull you into its unique worlds and make you feel as though your dreams can come alive too. Kone's work is especially good for me in that sense. He was always a very groundbreaking artist, and his work becomes more impressive to me when I look at the runtimes of these films. They usually clock into 90 minutes or less, making them never feel like they overstay their welcome. Paprika, like Kone's other work, is one to be experienced as blindly as possible. I know I said this already, but shut up. If Paprika was Kone's apex, Tokyo Godfathers is his antithesis. Tokyo Godfathers is much more grounded than the rest of his movies. This is a movie I think I'll come back to, like, every Christmas, like, genuinely. I'm a real sucker for found family stories, and Tokyo Godfathers is probably my favorite one out of all of them. The concept of a group of homeless vagabonds, is that how you fucking pronounce it?
Vagabond.
The concept of a group of homeless vagabonds growing closer to each other due to the circumstances around them and in their circle is something that I never thought would be something that I want fulfilled. I definitely never thought I'd feel as relevant as it does, especially with how the world works right now. A story about the lowest citizens in society's eyes just trying to make it through with the comfort of each other's just touching. Tokyo Godfathers hits a chord that many other emotional stories and even holiday films in general never hit for me. There's something more fascinating about the cynicism about the holidays, everything surrounding them, that interests me far more nowadays. Yet my favorite Christmas film and one of my favorite films of all time is It's a Wonderful Life. And while it is a very uplifting film overall, you can feel its bleakness throughout the entire production, whether that be from the string of financial issues George finds himself in, to the lack of meaning in his life. Something about that jives with me much more now than it did even when I was a kid. I might just also be hitting some cynic 4chan type phase or something, I don't really know. Tokyo Godfathers is the ultimate holiday film though. Hell, you don't even have to watch it on Christmas, I'm not your parental figure. Man, all that talk about anime made me really want to talk about more anime, but for the family, you know? Sorta. Familial tentacle fucking, baby. Yeah, I'm just going to dedicate a section to some of these shorter OVAs I ended up watching. There were a lot of nights where I was either busy or just not feeling like paying attention to something, so this was a great way to discover some whack-ass shit. Like Urotsukidoji. This was 108 minutes of pure tentacle porn, and damn, what a spectacle. I found it surprisingly cool though, and there's more? I didn't even know there's more than one urotsukidoji. Good stuff. I ended up watching just a bunch of other ecchi schlock, and that also ruled. Wicked City was another really good OVA recommended to me by my good friend PacJeff. Femdom Supremacy. But oh geez, I wish someone were here to talk about Plastic Little's jiggle counter.
Hey guys, Kim here, and I love weird OVAs. I love good OVAs too, but weird OVAs can be just so much more fascinating. Plastic Little is a 1994 OVA by Satoshi Yoshihara. The main plot is that one Tita Gaia having to save the world and protect her new friend, Elise. The OVA takes a far more relaxed pace though, with a lot of character moments. It's cute, but its one defining feature was the ever-elusive jiggle counter. Used only once more in ADV's release of Burn Up W, this was a bonus feature in the DVD release of the film. Whenever one of the characters' breasts would bounce on screen, a counter would go up in the top right corner. This was a very impactful addition to the overall product, though I'm not the biggest fan of the use of children. Overall, Plastic Little receives 3.5 jiggle counters out of 5.
Now take that and flip it by its head and you get Kite. This movie has been on my radar for ages now. I love movies that make me feel chills up my spine. I adore the grotesque and uncomfortable. It's weirdly fun seeing the most twisted parts of the human mind able to be conjured up into something viewable for my eyes, and Kite didn't disappoint in that regard. Sawa is a young teenage girl trying to avenge her dead parents by working for a pair of detectives who keep a series of assassinations under closed doors. Yeah, this OVA is bloody. Not a minute goes by in this series without blood the color of ketchup spewing everywhere. The action is pretty well choreographed, all things considered, at least in my opinion. Some things are pretty whack, but it's engaging and cool nonetheless. A point of contempt on my original watch was its use of sex. I felt dirty watching it, and this kind of steered myself away from the OVA for a while. I know that was the point of those scenes, but something in me still felt wrong. I felt like those scenes were a tad more glorified maybe than I would have wanted, but on rewatch, I'm actually a lot more keen on it. Not in the sense that you would think, please don't start calling the police right now on me. Those moments still made me feel the way they did, but I was able to discern that the film isn't really glorifying that aspect. A lot of people attribute that concern to the studio Green Bunny and the supposed requirement to have those scenes in, though as far as I know, there isn't any actual evidence proving such a thing. Coming back to Kite with my refreshed mindset helped me appreciate the grunginess and grossness of the world even more. It's an uncomfortable watch though, but through discomfort we find ourselves connected more to each other's stories. Sex and everything that comes with it is a very powerful topic that lots of people, artists and enjoyers, tend to shy away from, but it is in a lot of our most inner selves. Though I'll save my thoughts on that for the future. If you're looking for a chilling thriller about the exploitation of youth, Kite is a great choice. This video's pacing is so fucked already, but hey, let's fuck it up more and take a break from the transgressive, grimy, and dark side of anime for some chill vibes. First up is an OVA called Space Family Carl Vincent. I found it through AniList one night, and honestly, these half-hour OVAs were my lifesaver. The OVA itself was pretty cute. It's about this acting troupe consisting of weird little aliens taking care of this little baby. It's really short, only coming out to about 45 minutes or so. It's not really gonna knock your socks off or anything, but it's chill and it's got some heart. There's a charm to it, and for a before bed watch, I enjoyed it well enough. Yokohama's shopping log fucking rules. We love our green-haired robot sapphics. This shit is so cozy. I need to find more words to describe this stuff, but goddamn, I love animation so much. The sunset at the end of part 2 was the stuff of dreams. Amazing OVA.
Okay, fuck. Like, oh my god, this is so last minute, but I cannot get this one out of my head, and if I don't talk about it, I will die. Sailor Victory ruled. It was an OVA released in 1995, created by Katsuhiko Nishijima. It has some of the best aspects of Japanese culture, being cute girls and giant ninja mechs. In this series of I was too tired to watch something with a lot of depth, Sailor Victory was one of the most fun hidden gems I've ever watched. I especially found myself enjoying the character dynamics between the main heroines. All of them are just so fun. That's the best way to describe it. There's a ton of energy behind everything, including the voice acting of the dub, which I watched for this particular OVA. I found myself smiling the entire time I watched it. This one lady with the squiggly glasses gets my eternal rose stamp of approval. She's the ultimate silly queen. It's a tad derivative, but it's got heart behind it. The action is cool, the characters are amazing, and I adore its art. It's super duper vibrant and colorful. Also, it's ACAB as fuck. Go Queens, 10 out of 10.
Now that we have that out of the way, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Barefoot Gen is one of the most heartbreaking pieces of art I think I've ever seen. I felt empathy and grief on a whole other level with this film. It's one of the most harrowing narratives about war out there. The movie depicts a family's life after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I don't cry at a whole lot of stuff, but this was real close to doing so for me. Barefoot Gen is confrontational and very hard to watch, but it has a silver lining. Absolutely the most emotionally charged work I watched this marathon, and for absolutely good reason. I'm honestly glad to see we're getting more films about underdiscussed stories like with Killers of the Flower Moon. This was the most recent example on my mind, but the point is that the stories of marginalized groups end up being some of the most honest and powerful, especially when the narrative around those events, at least where I'm at, is very much the opposite of what Barefoot Gen portrays, and especially as confrontational and harrowing as that movie portrays everything. This marathon has convinced me that a lot of what I like about art is that ability to tap into an artist's inner self. You know that sentiment that all art is inherently political? I don't fully agree with that statement, but not for the reason you'd expect. The way people use that phrase makes it sound like all art is inherently propaganda when it really isn't. I think politics play a large role in the creation of said works, but I think culture plays a much larger role. Culture is the amalgamation of movements and aesthetics that add up to make a very specific time period unique. Culture is as much a product of art as art is a product of culture. Politics play a part in culture. I like to say it as one circle. People like to view politics as just who you're going to vote for in the next election, but that extends to even topics that should be considered human rights issues, such as poverty, war, feminism, racism, and the LGBTQ community. One of my favorite recent examples to use here is the film Poor Things. Spoiler alert, by the way, it's a really spectacular one if you haven't seen it yet, but yeah, spoilers. I don't know, I'm not your parent or whatever the fuck. The film is a commentary on not only feminism, but the othering of those with mental disabilities and finding autonomy. This aspect of the film is a part of that specific time period or culture. Poor Things takes the time to explore Bella Baxter's journey into the world by relishing in her newfound curiosity and fondness for experiencing life for herself. Whether that be exploring the ocean in a cruise, becoming a sex worker, and even simple things such as having conversations with people other than Godwin and Max. These ideas went against the grain heavily in the Victorian era, with art critic and philosopher John Ruskin stating in his work Sesame and Lilies, "The woman's power is for rule, not for battle, and her intellect is not for invention or creation, but for sweet ordering, arrangement, and decision. She must be enduringly, incorruptibly good, instinctively, infallibly wise, wise not for self-development, but for self-renunciation, wise, not that she may set herself above her husband, but that she may never fail from his side," and all of that creating a piece of art around it. You may or may not fuck with it, but it's art. I feel like I tend to look towards films from other countries for that itch of confrontation. America has its large share of art that speaks on prevalent and not so prevalent issues, but there's something inherently unique about hearing from the other side, as though we're finally getting the opportunity to listen to a once silenced narrative, one we may have never experienced and hopefully never will, but through the ingenuity of many wonderful and hardworking artists, they finally have the chance to tell their stories. And that's why one of the best films I may have ever watched in my entire existence is the complete opposite of that. Chibi Mariko-chan, My Favorite Song, is honest to God the film that got me the most emotional out of the stuff I watched for this. There was a warmth and coziness to this movie that is unprecedented in my mind. Coming up with the right words to describe this film is difficult without giving away too much. It has a lot of the sensibilities people attribute to Ghibli films in terms of its narrative. It's mellow, sentimental, and jaw-droppingly gorgeous. The simplistic but also sort of psychedelic visuals this one can have sometimes were one of the reasons I kept watching. The movie has these sort of trippy Fantasia-like sequences every once in a while that are like honestly so cool to watch. Its message about the power of art is one executed in a very powerful and meaningful way as it's discussed between many of the characters young and old. The power that certain figures in our lives have even if they're only present for so long and how that shapes us. Admiring the beauty of even simple songs with those that we love. To not go into too much, it was a film I needed after losing some of the more impactful people in my life that year. But I'm reminded more than ever to move forward. I would like to, in honor of Tadako, Mariko-chan's voice actor, highlight that aspect of her career. Tadeko's performance is in part why the film gave so much emotional resonance to me. This part makes me cry every time. I've never felt heartbreak like I have with this specific scene and other piece of art really, but in order to drive that point home, I feel as though you should watch this clip for yourself. And with that comes the end of this video. What started out as a way to expose myself to some cool shit I've been meaning to watch for a bit turned out to be the reason I've fallen in love with art once more. This decade has so far been one of the most tumultuous for art. From massive layoffs preventing artists from not starving themselves, to the rise of AI breaking down the heart and soul of humanity into ones and zeros, and corporations just proving over and over again that the work we love can be shackled away from us at any moment. Hell, the rise of short-formed content from sites like YouTube and TikTok have taken a lot of people's ability to admire the vast world of art just so they can get some advertising dollars in. Art is a word I've thrown around a lot in this video because there is a heart, passion, and care put into all of these works from all of these artists. There is a story to be told everywhere, and we should hold the ones that we get to see told close to our hearts. You'll see a lot of top 10 blanks about any medium, genre, or really anything, but condensing and limiting yourself to only the supposed cream of the crop bars you from so many works from so many talented people. That is why I made this video. I wanted people to smoke some of these vibes, and I hope you got to. I missed a few of these just for the sake of myself, mostly because this damn video was already long enough and I just didn't have a whole lot to say, but if you do want some in-depth thoughts or something of what I watched, or at least just a full list of everything I watched, I will have my letterboxd list down in the description. You can follow it or do whatever you feel like, but I don't know. I'm sorry that I usually dip for an unspecified period of time after a few vids, but I want to create the best shit that I can, and sometimes that means stepping away for a bit. All in all, though, I hope you at least want to smoke a few of these films, and hell, maybe tell me about what are more of your favorites below. Please boost this to the algorithm. I worked really hard on this. Bye!
Hey guys, Kim here, and I love weird boobs.